Well, hello, welcome back to another edition of Tropics Talk. I'm Gulf Coast meteorologist Jim Dickey here on this Wednesday morning, August the 13th. We just got a new update in from the Hurricane Center, the Tropical Weather Outlook. We're still working with the 5 o'clock numbers, 5 a.m. numbers on Tropical Storm Erin, so let's dive right in. First things first, with that new Tropical Weather Outlook, little low here south of Nova Scotia, which from this far view, I'm not going to spend much time on it. Still looking fairly ragged. That non-tropical low no longer expected to develop into anything as it drifts northward towards Nova Scotia, towards Atlantic Canada in general over the next 24 hours or so before it gets absorbed into that front. So we'll take that one off the board. We'll jump in with the new area that was added to the mix yesterday. So the area in particular we're watching right now actually moving over the Yucatan. Little tropical wave that actually sparked some pretty impressive thunderstorm activity yesterday. Looked pretty impressive east of the Yucatan. This will move over land, so no issues today. Once it gets to the southwest Gulf, then it does have the chance to spin up into a short-lived tropical depression or tropical storm prior to moving onshore in Mexico. Of course, no threat to Florida here. This will move onshore and fall apart if something does form. The waters are awfully warm there. We often do see some quick tropical development in this part of the Gulf. If it does take a name, that name would be Fernan, but no threat to Florida or the United States whatsoever as it would dive into Mexico. So with that, let's jump into Erin. 45 mile per hour sustained winds, which is what the winds have been all along with this storm since it formed. It's moving due west at 20 miles per hour, so still moving fairly quickly for a tropical system. And you can see how it has sparked a little more thunderstorm activity around the center. Actually, let's go ahead and zoom in on the satellite presentation. Yesterday, we didn't see any of those brighter colors showing up. It was basically void of any type of deep convection around the center. Now, you can still make out, as you look closely here, see those thinner clouds, those lighter grays showing up? That is the center of the storm. So all of the thunderstorm activity right now is displaced to the south, but at least there's some. A sign that it's starting to gain its footing once again. There have been a couple of things working against it. First things first, the fast forward motion. When storms are moving this quickly early in the game, they struggle to sort of stack themselves up vertically as they want to be able to strengthen. Along with that, it was in an area of pretty dense Saharan dust. Seeing signs in our Saharan dust tracker that it's starting to mix that out, though, starting to sort of surround itself in a pocket of moisture, and I think that process will continue. The thicker, the more dense Saharan dust off to the east. You can see, though, some of it to the north. I think that's why the northern side of the center is still exposed as of early this morning. Now, this is a big factor, too. The sea surface water temperatures. Falling off my chair here. Give me a moment. The sea surface water temperatures in the upper 70s, back where this was tracking once it left the Cabo Verde Islands, and we consider sort of 78 degrees to be the threshold for waters being warm enough to support a storm even being able to come together at all, let alone be able to strengthen. You can see where it's headed, though. Water temperatures getting closer to the Caribbean, in particular once it gets north of the Caribbean. That's where we're seeing those numbers in the lower 80s, in the middle 80s. That's when it moves over those warmer waters, things will really start to pick up intensity-wise. And there's fairly strong agreement in the model still at this point in time that this will become the first hurricane of 2025. There are a few outliers here that keep this a tropical storm strength. I think basically suggesting that this stays weaker today, tomorrow stays a more westerly course, never really gets into that warmer water over the north of the Caribbean, perhaps drags over the northern islands. I don't think that's going to play out. I think we are talking a Category 1 hurricane by Saturday, and we're talking Cat 2, Cat 3 as it's north of the Caribbean going into Sunday and Monday. Certainly what the Hurricane Center is talking about. Now, like I said, as we watch this intensify, we should sort of be rooting for that intensification process in this particular case, because a weaker storm would tend to stay on more of a westerly course and would be later to turn, and that could bring the southern end of the cone more into play, and that could bring this a little bit closer to the northeastern side of the Caribbean. So again, we're rooting for this to come together. The sooner it does strengthen, the sooner it will start to feel more of those broad steering currents and begin to turn more to the north and west. and you see the intensification from the Hurricane Center. They've slowed things down a little bit. Hurricane by Friday, Category 3 by Sunday, holding at Category 3 intensity north of Puerto Rico, well north of Puerto Rico. I think a factor here, too, all indications are this will remain a fairly small and compact storm. So sometimes you have a hurricane passing north of you in Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. You still get those outer fringe impacts. It doesn't necessarily appear to be the case this time. This is the GFS forecast model. I don't often like to show you one individual run of a forecast model here, but I think this one has value in that this is by Sunday. When again, we're talking about the potential, this could be ramping up towards Category 3 intensity. Yeah, there's a pocket of moisture around this. It's dragging in some deep tropical moisture. It is definitely going to enhance rainfall over the Dominican, over Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, the northeastern fringe of the Lesser Antilles here, but as far as any direct impacts, any hurricane wind impacts, unless this takes a much more southerly track, which I don't anticipate at this time. I don't think that's an issue here. And the worst of the rain stays to the north of the islands as well. As again, this stays a fairly compact little storm. We're talking just a few closed isobars with this on the GFS by Sunday. It would likely begin to expand from there as we go into next week, but at least by the time it's passing the Caribbean, it remains small and compact. Feels the high pressure backing off to the east. Right now, that high is stretched all the way across Florida into the Gulf. But by the time we get to Sunday, thanks to the trough digging off the east coast, that high breaks down. And on the western side of it, that gives us this escape route to ride the fringes of the Bermuda Azores high, which will be closer to the Azores, and tracks off to the north. Very strong model agreement in this. Yeah, I've seen some posts about trends a little further to the west, a little further to the east here. At this point, so far out in the game to have this type of model consensus, basically every single model showing this turning to the north, a low probability outcome at this point that there be any direct impacts to the east coast of the United States, certainly to the east coast of Florida. It is a very safe bet at this point. This will stay well to the east of the Bahamas and Florida. Could something unforeseen happen? Sure, it's why we track these. It's why we'll be keeping a close eye on this going forward in time for you. But at this point, I think the idea that this comes close to Florida is, again, a low, the lowest of low probability outcome. Still, we'll be watching for the Bahamas, and as this does become a major hurricane, this is going to throw some big waves, cause some very rough surf for the East Coast. That's something we'll be talking about as well. And perhaps, too, as this grows in size, if it follows the western side of the model suite, and then we could be talking about, at the very least, some fringe impacts for coastal North Carolina. So, again, all of that, we'll be watching it for you over the next couple of days, especially those of you in the Caribbean, and yes, on the East Coast as well. Be sure you're keeping one eye on the forecast just in case there are any changes. Of course, if there are, we will be sure to alert you to them as soon as we start to see that happening. Until next time, I'm meteorologist Jim Dickey. Have a great day.